Hi everybody, and welcome to another Indie Hour. We are doing The Guards of Traitor's Toll from Grey for Now, Graham Davey's publishing company for all kinds of cool indie skirmish games, which if you've seen them before, things like Test of Honor, a samurai dueling game, and now his most recent, The Guards of Traitor's Toll. So if you haven't been doing Indie Hour before, we do these every week, and this one will have aired a week previous for the patrons. We do a poll system typically, and this was before we reset the poll, this was one of the ones which everyone had been begging for but wasn't out and available yet, and Graham actually got in touch with me and got me a copy of the box set, and so that's why this was like not necessarily a vote one that came up in the register, but by popular demand one that skipped into the queue. And next week we'll be back with the usual voting system where patrons vote on the game that we're covering. So last two were sort of by popular demand outside of the polling system, and then we'll be back with more patron picks next week. So what is Guards of Traitor's Toll? Well, I was kindly sent a complimentary review copy by Graham, and this is a huge box of miniatures. You get 36 miniatures in the box, 24 sort of like citizens of Traitor's Toll, and then 12 guards, so enough for 2 players to play, 2 6-person guard teams, and they are beautiful, beautiful plastic sets. Full hard plastic and the same sort of styrene you get from GW. They are completely customizable, which is a fantastic, I think like dream sort of state for people that like modeling fantasy stuff. And you can use these in almost any setting. Like, this is just a perfect collection of kind of D&D, fantasy medieval sort of NPCs, and then armored fighter types with the guards. And then of course they're fully compatible to mix and match too. So you can mix the sort of like the citizenry with the guards and have a unique bunch of miniatures overall. So let's take a look at the website. So you can see what the actual offer is here. This is all going to be in Canadian dollars, obviously. That's where I am. But this is the start set that we're looking at right now today. And we're going to do our usual scan through the rulebook and stuff. But you can see here, like I said, huge selection of miniatures, beautiful, like customizable bits. So you get 4 frames of the sort of like street folk, and then you get 2 frames of the guards. And as I said earlier, like, you can see that this just harkens back to probably the early to mid 2000s of plastic miniature design, where all the arms are interchangeable, all the torsos are interchangeable. There's just a huge amount of gubbins on the frame, everything from swords to backpacks and knives. You've got a flautist, you've got like a scientist, you got a play actor, you got sailors, you got weird druids and brigands, you've got beggars, just like everything you possibly think of. Fire throwers, potion sellers, a snake charmer, and then a ton of different weapons and equipment, obviously, for the guards themselves. And this comes also with the dice, all of the cards. There's a huge pile of cards here. Everything from like secret events that can take place over the course of the game, to the actual stat cards for your guards themselves, weapon drills, different types of weapons, 4 training plots. And I believe the main plots are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 17, 18, 19, 20 cards deep, which means 24 different storylines, emergent storylines, along with different types of suspects that you're going to try and catch. So Guards is an interesting game system. It does use bespoke dice. So you do get like a set of tokens and stuff to go with this as well, and a full rulebook on top of that. It's an A5 scale and clocks in, which is, we're going to look at this thing next, clocks in at 112 pages. With full index and like quick reference and stuff at the back as well. We'll take a look at that in just a second. So what's the vibe of this game? Well, it's a semi-cooperative medieval warband building game where you take place, you take the role of a guard captain leading his squad of guardsmen against rival squads inside the same city, trying to keep the peace. You are both working slightly against each other just to like try and get the most credit basically for keeping the streets safe, but always against the citizenry. And you're just patrolling, and stuff happens during patrols. Stuff will emerge. Like, so for instance, as you eventually follow suspects and discover plots, things like a brawl breaks out. There's a stabbing. Somebody gets mugged. An agitator or annoying merchant. A performance happens that's illegal. A secret killer's on the streets. And then even major events like a wizard duel breaks out that you have to try and break up. And you and the guards are forced to try to keep the peace on the streets, and the better that you can do that, the better you accomplish your mission. Now, it does have an emerging narrative, and like I said, it's card-driven. So if you think of this as kind of like a free-form, kitchen table-sized version of like classic board games like Betrayal at House on the Hill, right? You never really know what's going to happen going out into the streets, and you're going to get kind of a different result every single time. You do get 4 training missions in here as well, and the training missions are simpler sort of missions like a violent suspect, suspicious crate, a fleeing suspect, or a sneaking suspect to try and follow the suspects themselves. And this is kind of reminiscent of games like, for instance, Don't Look Back. Could have different traits. You could be a thug, you could be clumsy, skittish, wily, heavy. And again, there'll be a procedural generation in cards for like what kind of suspect it is for any given plot. And multiple plots could be going on at the same time. So as you build out your model collection, and you start to like build through this like huge amount of sprues, you do need to have a certain number of citizenry on the table at any given time, and your 6-man squad to go in and fight. And they will sort of play to theme when the miniature that is determined to be the actual suspect that you're following is identified by the guards. So let's take a look at the rule book now, and you guys can have a gander at what's inside, because this is, like I said, 112 pages, A5. It's not a huge rule book to digest. It's all in full color, and the rules themselves are a nice, clean, simple sort of like you need to reach a certain threshold of successes kind of a game. So it's in a full color layout. It's nicely indexed, so you can actually quickly find everything that you're looking for at a glance. And of course, it's fully illustrated with the pictures of the great models from the box. So what are you getting here? Well, you're going to be playing with 2, 3, or even 4 players, because it is semi-cooperative. You can work together at times, but the best guard captain will win, and you can also play it solo, in which case it's just you against the city. So this game does have a solo play option, which is kind of cool. Every player recruits a squad of guards, including 1 guard captain and about 5 others. Solo players can have extras, because obviously it's them against the city. There is a point system, but you don't need this for your first set of starter sets. There's a maximum number of players that can be having the board, but we'll reduce the number of people that will have in your guard stuff, and they'll go back into reserve. So like normally if you have 1 guard captain and 5 others, that's a 2-player game. The more players are on the table, the less guys you'll be taking out in with you, because that's going to make it less crowded. And then civilians. Traitors' Toll is a crowded, bustling city, so the population of his board is populated with a variety of citizens. During the game, they move about with some control by the players, getting in the way or potentially helping your cause. There's no enemies at the start of the game, just people going about their lives, but suspects will soon emerge from the crowd. And then we got our cards. And obviously the game comes with cards for every unit that you'll have in the game. So the guard captain, he's got, for instance, a 4 stat for his his aim. His agility is going to be 3. His brawn is going to be 3. His wits is 4, and his hearts, which is hit points, is 4 as well. The guy here on the screen is a guard constable. He's got 4 for his aim. He's got 4 for his agility, which is how many things you need to roll. He's got 3 for his brawn. He's got 3 for his wits and 3 for his hearts. And then the game activation system works a little bit like a bolt action or even the 2000 AD like Judge Dredd game. You're going to put chips in a bag. There are a set of tokens that come in. The order in which figures are act is determined by the drawing tokens from a bag. If you get a guard action token, you can use it to act with one of your guards who hasn't acted yet, and captains can do this twice per turn. So as soon as you act, you put the guard token next to the figure, and they can't go again. The guard captain can have 2 tokens next to him before you can't activate him twice. If you draw a suspect action token, you must choose and activate a suspect. And if you draw a plot token, you must trigger a new plot from the deck. These trigger new crimes. And lastly, there's time tokens, which allow you to move civilians about. And when the final time token is drawn, the turn ends, even if some figures haven't activated yet. So a certain number of these will go in the bag based upon the number of figures that you're, the players that you're using. And then once you've got all the time tokens gone, the game can end, even if there's guard tokens left, even if there's plot and suspect tokens left. So it does make a cool kind of like RNG for the activation system, where you're never 100% sure everybody's going to get to go as much as you want. And then you get D6s and then the sort of bespoke dice. and they have a number of swords on them. Those are successes. So every sword is a success. There's a 3-sword, a 2-sword, and a 1-sword. I think 4 of the sides is going to be swords. And then you have a crown sword, silver coins, and then you have a foot sword, which is your movement, and then the remaining rolls. So whenever you need to roll a d6 and something happens, it'll be typically laid out in the kind of GW format of like a 4+, 2+, or whatever. And then tests. During the game, your guards and other figures take tests, rolling the number of dice equal to their score. So like if you have an aim of 4, you'd roll 4 dice. If you had an aim of 2, you'd roll 2 dice, and then count up the number of successes. The more tests, for most of them, like a basic test, any 3 or more swords is a pass. So you can always pass on 1 dice because there is a 3 facing on the dice, but the more dice you roll, obviously, the more chances you have of getting higher than that. And more difficult tests might require more successes to pass. Attacks is when you try and hit somebody, but you also try and subdue them, which is like tie them up basically and arrest them. Guards are often trying to subdue because you'll get more credit for bringing somebody in and then just bashing their brains in. And then moving, when figures are moving around, the dice work differently. The number of dice you roll will depend on your agility score. So that's the second stat. And then the number of swords will actually show the possible directions the figure can move in. This means your figure won't always go where you want them to go because they're getting lost in the crowd. However, if you're trying to reach a suspect and are close enough, you can always head straight towards them. And then results showing feet allow you to go slightly faster than normal. Finally, there's silver coins. They can be spent to trigger special bonuses and coin effects that apply to the test for the roll. So for instance, if you have on your card any kind of court effect as an action, and then you can trigger it when you would roll that, pull that up in a test. It's usually like a criticals, kind of like a trigger. It allows them to put into the game some like interesting kind of wacky effects. Then to play a game, you'll first choose a mission. This will tell you the central story for your game with tasks for your guards to complete and how the game ends. There's a quick training mission to help you learn the game, after which the standard mission is patrol duty, in which your guards patrol the streets and must deal with whatever comes their way. Subsequent missions may involve building a fire, like a building on fire, the discovery of a body, and they may be played singly or linked together into a campaign. And what's nice about that is that kind of gives you like the A plot, and then the B plots are the emergent things that'll happen if you pull plot devices from the bag. Throughout the game, you'll draw plot cards. These present tasks to complete. Most plots will start with identifying a suspect from amongst the civilians on the board. You'll often need to catch and arrest a suspect. Arrested suspects must be escorted away to the nearest guardhouse. If you leave them unattended, they might get away. Meanwhile, some suspects turn out to be harmless or in need of your protection or help. And they might even have useful information. Other tasks may involve investigating a particular location on the board, so like a dark alley or some crates or something like that. Expansions will then add more plots later on, and obviously Graham is intending to add additional things to this game. And then finally, assistance. If they're close by, civilians might be, they might actually decide that they're going to help you out. And then finally, discontent. And I love this thing, is that obviously hanging out in a city full of people where you are always outnumbered, one of the problems is that the citizens might turn on you. And that measures the collective anger and irritation of the population of the city. The plot currently in play often raises the level of general discontent. So like if you pull one of the training plots, for instance, it might raise the actual like hostility of the people around you. So this one has 1 discontent on it. And then guards can also gain personal discontent, which is only applied to their squad. But if your discontent's high, it'll become more difficult to get information from people, and they might not assist you, and it becomes harder to win the game. And then finally, rewards. Successfully completing a plot removes any discontent it caused. So like if I do this one, the discontent comes off. And I also get the reward. So I get 2 gold coins off of this card if I happen to succeed at it. However, any discontent remaining costs you gold coins as you're forced to pay bribes and fines. You may also spend gold during the games, and these can be used to bribe people. Or if you roll 2 silver coins, you might want to add them in a gold to get an extra action. So you can trade them in. They're almost like a might point kind of currency inside the game, like from Lord of the Rings strategy battle game. And as you acquire them, you kind of power up your ability to do special moves and take extra actions. And then also rerolls. Advanced cards are played on your guardsmen to improve them and gain useful skills. So these are the advanced cards, and there's a ton of these as well. They're everything from like a weapon drill to you becoming a sprinter. And these are sort of like the skills in Mordheim. This is your skill tree. So your basic card is your guard constable, and you get tons of these cards. You'd put the advanced card underneath their card to make them the special guy who's learned a skill. Remove personal discontent. If the reward includes this symbol, it cancels personal discontent. So I don't think any of the basic ones have that as a reward, but some of the more advanced plots, for instance, if I look at Brawl, the reward is you gain an advance, you get a skill if you do it, so you get to draw an advance card, you remove a personal discontent, and you get a gold coin if you solve that plot and you finish that investigation. And then finally, secrets. The final type of reward for a specific mission could be a secret or plot. These cards are revealed hidden outcomes information, and there's a huge deck of secrets, but don't read unless instructed. So the idea here is that this is the legacy deck. This is the thing that we don't look at ever until we're told to draw it, and it'll have a number associated with it that you go and look up to try and figure out what the secret is. So there's secret 36, 12, 25, and they're all numbered, so you don't want to shuffle these. And when you're playing the game, you'll basically learn more things about the city that you're in. And then we got our markers, blood drops, they're your wounds, clue investigation markers, a lot like in Ranges Shadowdeep. Prisoner markers, placed next to arrested suspects. Fire markers, used if buildings catch ablaze. And then we've also got things like sneak markers, if you can't target a suspect. Reload markers, if someone's fired their weapon. Wheel tokens, to move wagons. And then cautious markers, if someone's prepared for an attack. And then side street markers, a route on and off the board, which means if you need to escort a prisoner away, then you'd go near those markers. And then finally, linked games. If you're playing a series of games with the same opponent or solo, then keep the details of your guard squad the same. Advances can be mastered to carry over to your next game. Likewise, guards that were cut down may return with an injury, and certain secrets have continuing effects game to game. An exciting narrative runs through missions and will continue in the future expansion sets and allow you to uncover the shape and story of Traitor's Toll. So that's our contents of the box and a basic overview of the game. You can see here building all your miniatures. So this is actually really handy if you guys are planning on playing this with your own collection of miniatures, for instance, in the future. You do want to have a certain number of each type of guy. So if there's 24 figures, you want at least 3 wizards, scholars, and clerics, so like kind of that mystical type, 3 rogues, fighters, and ruffians, 3 nobles, envoys, and bankers, 3 workers, servants, and miners, 3 traders, merchants, and cooks, and 3 performers, dancers, and buskers. So as long as they kind of generally look like those types of things, that sort of 24 figure mix, actually it's not even 24, it's only 18 figure mix. So you have lots of extra bits and stuff too, will give you the basics. So if you're looking to just start playing, build your 2 guard squads, build 18 figures, that should give you enough going on the table, that you're ready to play. So there's quite a high model count in the table because it's a busy city. And then finally you want some cool terrain. And man, the Sarissa Precision, like fully prepared and painted buildings look fantastic. They have an entire Traitor's Toll sort of like terrain set, and it looks amazing. Highly cool with like balconies, and they just come ready out of the box. There is a whole background section here, which I'm not going to get too into, but Traitor's Toll is exactly what you think it is. It's a huge toll booth in between 2 mountains in a mountains range. And so, yeah, it's people live there that are exactly the kind of people that you think would live inside a giant toll booth. It's grifters, ne'er-do-wells, cutthroats, and there's like sort of, it's almost like a vacation town because it's broadly spread between the people who live there, who are fleecing you, and the visitors who are traveling through. And that kind of gives you an idea of how you want to build your miniatures when you're building the miniatures in this box set. There's also dwarves and half-orcs. This is a fantasy setting from the Northern Kingdoms. And I think if I was to make a guess as to what the expansions are going to be, it's going to be to add those other sort of like nations and forces into the mix inside this game. Love the illustrations, fantastic line work and stuff. And yeah, Baron Elric Grote is the proud descendant of the original robber barons who founded the city. So like, This is an organized crime city. You know what I mean? It's a little bit like Marienburg is, where the merchants, they control like the riverways across the empire in Warhammer Fantasy Battle. They set up Marienburg as basically it's a trade city, but it's a huge toll booth. And that's how they managed to become a power without being a power. They're not really a elector count, even though they are an elector count. I think they're the only ones elected, rather. And the guards are set up to basically be like enforcers of the peace. So lovely bit of background in here, and we can read up on that another time, but obviously this is going to take a long time. But it does go through all of the different sort of like burgs inside the city. So if you want to change up your terrain collection and stuff too, you definitely can. And then these are all given like an actual picture in here. So a lot of love went into this. I gotta say, I love the fact that Graham took the time in this like rule book to actually spell out what kind of place this is and to give us like all the different ward sort of descriptions and stuff too. Talking a bit about the figures themselves. So we've got guards. The guards are all on 28 mil scale miniatures on 25 mil puddle bases. You can take off the puddle bases, but I think this is, people are kind of divided on puddle bases. Puddle bases are when there's a small ring of plastic under the feet. A lot of D&D players, remember, these are figures intended to be used in any game. They're miniature agnostic. They're not just for this game, even though they're perfect for this game. They like the puddle base because they're not gaming with these in the same way. They're moving on a grid. So the less the base shows up on the miniature, the more they enjoy it. A lot of RPG players, like sort of like in the older days, would love those styles of bases. And this is just a good mix. You can just glue the puddle base down and then put some like debris and grit around it, and you won't even see it afterwards. So I'm fine with them. I think they look really good. There's a point system, but they're not needed for your starter set. Like they said earlier, for the guards, note there's a maximum number of guards that a player can have on the board. And it's reduced with more players. The remainder stay in the guard house. And finally, civilians. You get allies, traitors. They can also be, like bought with. So if you find gold coins by finishing plots and stuff, you can even buy things during the course of the game. And then suspects. During play, certain civilians will be identified as suspects and become a target of the guards. When they first emerge, a suspect's given an action token and immediately makes an action. Their token goes into the container at the end of the turn. And from then on, they make actions in the same way as guards. So when you determine that there's going to be a suspect, you pick someone to be a suspect and you put that token on them. It tracks them around so you can see who's a suspect. Players will roll dice and make some decisions for suspects, but which actions they take depends on their behavior as shown on the relevant plot card. If a guard cuts down a suspect instead of arresting them, they may take discontent penalties. The people of the city do not approve when citizens are killed in the street, even though they no longer count as civilians. So suspects, it's a funny thing. You have to decide how you're going to actually deal with them. And then harmless. Some suspects just need a bit of help or are too feeble to be a threat, and they're labeled as harmless. Dangerous ones are much less common, but they have a suspect that can attack to wound and kill. Some suspects are dangerous from the outset, stated in their plot card, but any suspect who makes a strike attack that causes a blood drop or cuts down another figure counts as dangerous from then on. Dangerous suspects can be cut down by the guards without the normal discontent penalty. So as soon as someone attacks or becomes violent, you are free to use your weapons. It's basically a provocation clause. The rest of the town does not care if someone's knifing people if you kill them. And then finally, prisoners. When a suspect's arrested, they become a prisoner. The figure's laid down with a prisoner marker next to them, and they no longer count as suspects because you're dragging them along. And then finally, there's a thing like creatures such as horses, dogs, pigs, geese, and a whole swarm of rats, as well as strange creatures like roof imps and giant spiders that could also emerge. And you get given sort of a general idea of like how you want to design your figures and what you want to base them on. And then finally, plot cards. Guard Circle doesn't have a player controlling the other side of the fight. Instead, suspects will arrive, chase, and emerge outside. So this is a plot-driven game, and they're drawn as the game proceeds. When a plot card is drawn, it's put into play by the person reading it out loud. So first, the general discontent caused, so 1 discontent for this cut purse one. And then they read aloud, "My purse, guards, I've been robbed." And then the ability serves the suspect. So somebody becomes a suspect immediately. They have an aim of 3, a sneak of 4, a brawl of 2, a wits of 3, and 3 hearts. And then their action and reactions a suspect makes, known as their behavior. So in this case, it's going to be sneak and dodge. The criteria for identifying them, any civilian with bare feet. So you can take a marker and put it next to any civilian with bare feet. And this, I love the identify part of the clause because it means that no matter how you make your miniatures, it's almost like, what was that game? Guess Who. You're guess whoing your own miniatures and like, oh, there's 3 guys with bare feet. One of them gets the token. And so if you draw the token from the bag, you might pick a suspect closer to you or further from you. And this is where the game gets interesting, right? Finally, the task, you have to arrest them in this case. Keywords provided, the rules that they may refer to, things like petty crime is a keyword that they have, so you don't want to kill this person. And then finally, the rewards in this case would be a gold coin, an advance, and a discontent, a general discontent that goes away. But a complication, an additional problem or task often related to the current level of discontent. The nearest guard must take a discontent test, and if failed, play secret 001. So if you fail a discontent test, which would mean you don't roll 3 successes, I think it's on wits, then you have to roll those dice, and then you got to draw a secret card to see what happens. So tons of plot cards, again, drawn when you generate plot. And then note, Plot cards present certain tasks for them to do, providing aid or investigating clues. Note that a guard always has the option of cutting down a suspect instead of arresting them, but then they gain discontent as a result. A guard whose action completed the card receives any rewards shown below. This is usually a number of gold coins, advanced cards, and or removing personal discontent. In some cases, the reward might not be to play a specific number for a secret card, and the plot card is removed from play. The player completed it keeps the card. Any discontent tokens on the card are removed too. And then finally, failing a plot card. If a task can't be completed because they fled, then it's failed. In this case, the plot card and any tokens on it stay in play, leave the card where it is, and any discontent continues to apply. So if you let the suspect get away, the crowd can get more and more crazy. And then finally, mission objectives. Note that some missions add extra objectives on top of the plot cards. Players should need to decide which of these should be prioritized. And then you're free to discuss and negotiate what you've been sent out to do. And then finally, traitors are a special type of suspect. Traitor plot cards do not give the guards a task to complete, but instead identify someone offering useful stuff that you can do. So if you draw a traitor plot card, for instance, like a snitch, they won't have a discontent marker. Like this one's an enchanter that I'm looking at right now. But the snitch is, if you can track them, they may have some useful information. So they still get a profile, and any civilian roll on the identify card. Each guard can visit this traitor once per game. So we go to the identify cards, and we'll actually roll a dice to see who it's going to be instead of having a trait on the card. So you get a huge list of possible identities for this person. So first you roll a d6 for what chart you're going to go on, and then you get to what they might have on them. So like if you roll a 1, you roll the arcane section, and then you roll again, and they might have anyone with a telescope. If you roll a 3 expensive, they might have a gem or a coin or a crown or a tiara. Tools, they might have a light or a flame, a hammer or a pick, a rope or a chain, and that's how you identify who it's going to be, and then you can go and buy stuff from them. And then make a barter interaction. If passed, you may look at the face down clue marker anywhere on the table and place it back face down so you can see what a clue marker is. And then major parts. All purple major plots are more challenging, often involving a number of suspects and perhaps leading to a secret card in addition to the tasks that you have to complete. All right, so identify. Throughout the game, you'll be asked to identify figures on the table. This means picking out specific civilian figures or having them become suspects. The following cannot be chosen unless a rule specifically calls for it. Existing suspects, civilians that have a clue marker for any reason, allies, traitors, prisoners, or creatures. Note that it's fine, indeed, for players to choose the most advantageous figure that meets this criteria. For example, it's often a good idea to choose a suspect near one of your own cards. So you roll the 2d6, like I said, and you go across the tables. And if there isn't a civilian available with a certain item, always count as a 6. So like any noble, any merchant, any wizard, any rogue, any worker, any performer. And that's why you want to broadly have an even number of each of these on the table when you make your miniatures. And then finally, other criteria. Different plot cards may have other criteria for you to identify, like 2 civilians closest to each other, a civilian with a bottle or goblet or tankard, a noble with an expensive item, a rogue near a guard. In all these cases, there's no need to roll, just simply identify the person whose criteria matches. And then finally, place a figure. Sometimes a rule will tell you to place a figure rather than identifying one. In this case, just take a suitable figure from your collection and put them down. Some might come out of a house. I've already been through the ability scores, but other important terms are things like if you're ready or unready. You're ready if you don't have an activation token. You're unready if you don't, or if you have 2 if you're a captain. A friend, someone on your own squad. A rival, someone in the other squads. Enemies are suspects who might be non-harmless. Line of sight, if you can see somebody. Clear view, there's no terrain in the way. Touching, if your figures' bases are touching. Cut down as if you're dead. Subdued as if you are arrested. And then game turns. During each turn of the game, a number of civilians will move around, and most of the guards and most of the suspects will make 1 action. A few may make more or none at all if you don't draw the right tokens. The order in which it happens is by drawing tokens for a bag. During each turn, players alternate taking it, drawing a token with no looking, depending on which token you draw. Either activate a guard, a suspect, or maybe trigger a plot. And when the final time token comes out, the turn ends, even if other tokens are left in the bag and some people haven't activated yet. So what tokens and how many? Before the game, find a suitable container like a cup. For each guard, a constable on board, add 1 guard token. For every guard captain, add 2 tokens. And then guards left in the guard house don't add anything. So if I've only got 4 guards left and then a guard captain, I'd put 6 tokens in the bag. So if my opponent and I both had that, there could be 12 tokens. Typically, there'll be 14 if you have the full squad starting the game. Then add 2 plot tokens and 3 time tokens. And then if you get suspects or wagon wheel stuff, you add it to the bag later on until it's resolved. And then finally, plot tokens. If they get drawn, then you read out the plot, and then new suspects get placed because of those. And that's kind of the core of the activation turn. So I really like this because what you have here is you have an interesting level of RNG. So you still have a lot of control over your guards, because it's most likely you draw guard tokens during your draw. And that means you go in the order of who you want to have go. But the people who are lagging or who aren't really doing much, there's a good chance later on in the game they don't get to activate because you draw the time tokens. And then actions. So a guard action token must be assigned to one of your guards, and suspect action tokens have to be assigned to suspects. Complete an action. For guards, the player picks an action to do, and the chosen figure does it. And then for suspects, it'll say on the card what they're going to do or not. Reactions can also be done. When a figure is attacked, they must respond with a special type of action called a reaction, as long as they are ready. But if they've already activated, they don't get to do anything. And then finally, losing an action, or if they're forced to make a reaction, take a matching action token from the container and put it next to the figure. So if you aren't activated yet, then you decide to react, you have to, even if it's a suspect, you would take their token out of the bag and play it, so it's then done. Free action reactions can be done, and then no token gets placed. And then finally, time tokens. When you draw a time token, the player moves 2 civilians as followed. Identify a civilian anywhere on the board using the identify card, so you just randomly generate one. Make a roving action with a civilian. Civilians have a wits of 3, so you roll 3 dice for the test. Note that it does not matter if the civilian's already moved this turn. And then next, find the nearest civilian within 6 of the one who just moved, and they respond by moving 4 inches in the direction, depending on the first civilian's type. So it's like, are they moving away or towards? And so the civilians kind of mill about in this really organic way, where the first one to do something then generates a reaction from the one around them. And so if you have a dude, like a big brawler, walk up to someone and they get spooked because they're nearest, they might run away from them, right? So if they have arcane or weaponry tools, they go force directly away. If it looks expensive or have tools, they might move towards or alongside. And if they're consumers or performers, so like if, for instance, they have food or they're like dancing, then they'll move towards them because they're interested. And it's that neat kind of like they act the way they should act thing that makes the table kind of feel alive. And then finally, end of the turn, return all your tokens to the bag, roll for all fire spreading and burning, roll for prisoners escaping and see if they break out. Roll for temporary effects, like things like poisons or whatever that might resolve themselves. Solo players check for the total discontent to see if the city turns on them. Call for more guards, add the correct number of guard action tokens for the new guards. Heal guards remaining in the guardhouse. More civilians enter. Civilians who've been knocked to the ground stand up, and the player who drew the final time token goes first the next turn. So they didn't get to act, which means whoever drew that last time token gets to go first in the following round. And that's the basic core mechanics of like the turn. All right, so let's talk about tests and coin effects, because this is the way that you're going to resolve most of the actions in the game. Bonus dice and losing dice, it's kind of advantage disadvantage from D&D. You'd add stuff to your pool. If lost dice were reduced to 0, you still roll at least 1 dice though. So it's exactly what it sounds like. If I have a wits of 4 and I get a bonus dice, I'm rolling 5 dice, looking for at least 3 or more swords. And then if I get a pass, I get to do whatever I'm trying to do. If I get a fail, then that action fails. And then finally, foots, they're only used for movement tests and not for ability tests. And then coin results, they're also wasted unless the figure can use them to trigger an effect. So coins and feet don't do anything unless you're making this specific type of roll, and they're just considered kind of blanks for a standard test. When the rules require you to take a test, there's often a word in parentheses with an ability, like wits, charm, or brawn toughness. This word is a test type telling you when you have an effect. The test type would not apply to number of dice you roll. So like, for instance, if you have a certain type of character that has, let's say, charm on their card as a keyword, when they make a wits charm appropriate test, they would get a bonus dice to do that specific test. Who's got one of those? I think the singer does. As a trait. Those are plots. Where's my traits? Traits right here. Oh, no, there's no keywords in the traits. It would still be in the plots. So for example, when a guard finds a map with a coin, any test that uses wits awareness helps them find their way around the city more, but the map won't affect wits charm or wits intellect tests. There we go. So that's more likely going to be on advances. Yeah, so here we go. Silver tongue. It's a skill ongoing. The guard has the following coin effect. If he rolls a coin, silver tongue, charm, roll 1 extra dice and add it to the result of the test. So yeah, these are going to give you advantage on certain types of tests. And finally, the dice has 1 silver coin face. Coin can be spent to trigger special bonuses and effects. And then this could be like your weapon effects and stuff too. So again, your advances might give you something cool, like a ranged weapon might have a a special effect on it, and up to 2 of your models can have ranged weapons. Each coin rolled can only trigger 1 coin effect, so you can have to choose, and each coin effect can only be used once per action. You can't use the same coin effect twice. Suspects will also use coin effects, so like you might have like a mage that has some kind of like critical effect on their attacks, and you'd use the coin automatically if they rolled it. And then 3 coins equals energize. When a guard or a suspect rolls 3 silver coins in a single roll, they can spend all 3 to trigger the energize coin effect. They have a sudden burst of energy, so you could have your action or reaction become free, put their action token back in the container. If their action was already free for some reason, it has no additional effect. So it allows them to effectively be kind of a guard captain. If they roll that, they're going to get to go again during the same turn. And then finally, gold coins. If you have any gold coins from doing plots, you can pay a gold coin to trigger a coin effect at any time, so it can count as a silver coin. If you roll 2 silver coins, you can add in 1 gold to reach 3 and trigger the energized coin special effect. So you can spend them to add your dice roll to get a free action. And when a gold coin is spent in this way or any other reason, it's discarded and no longer counts towards winning the game because they're also your victory points, a lot like in Warhammer Underworlds. All right, and now my personal favorite mechanic in here. So that's the sort of like core test and dice mechanics. Let's talk about discontent. General discontent, and this is the city starting to turn on you. Add up the discontent icons in the top right corner of the plot cards in play. Also add the total of any discontent tokens on the plot cards in play. So this could be additional stuff from the actions you took, like cutting down suspects. Note the plot cards which have been failed, usually because they're having escaped from the board, like the guy ran away. They still contribute to the general discontent of the board. And then finally, personal discontent is specific to each player and their guard squad. Common causes are using intimidation for interactions. So like if they're mad because you tried to frighten them, knocking down civilians to the ground while running, cutting down suspects instead of arresting them, or other circumstances in the plot card. Although personal discontent is earned by individual, there's no need to keep track of exactly who earns it. Each player just keeps their own tokens. And then, yeah, dangerous suspects don't give you the discontent, but, you're still gonna get discontent for doing stuff like knocking people down, putting a blood drop on somebody, failing an attack of doing something or cutting someone down. And then discontent tests. Once play guards, during play, you have to make a discontent test if something bad happens. Roll a number of dice equal to the guard's heart command, add up the general discontent and the player's personal discontent. This number is stored that you need to pass the test. So, if you fail the test, bad things happen. Players should try to avoid their discontent getting too high and look out for any opportunities to remove it. The main way of removing discontent is successfully completing plot cards. When this happens, the discontent caused by the plot then goes away. If you have no personal discontent as a reward, then you may choose to remove a discontent from another plot token in play. So like if you are just acting really nice, you can also reduce the general discontent across the whole table. At the end of the game, discontent has negative effects. Each player adds the general discontent to their personal discontent. They must remove this number of gold coins from their victory point total. And any player with no coins left automatically loses. If nobody has any left, then everyone's lost. And docked pay and demotions for everyone all around. The player with the most coins left is the winner. So you have to balance how much gold you get from completing plots with how much discontent you cause. And the net total is going to be what you actually have to win the game at the end of it all. So we're just going to do a few more general rules here because obviously there's lots to do, but the whole core mechanic here of rolling dice, triggering bonus results, it basically creates a game that's never going to be quite the same twice, and also gives you lots of inside your individual actions, sort of like choices and decisions to make, like how you spend your silver coins, how you react to your opponent putting suspects places and moving around the table. And the game's going to start fairly quiet, but by turns 2 or 3, there's going to be a lot going on while you both scramble to try and keep the city under control. And the more players, I think the more the shenanigans just escalate and the crazier it becomes. Other general stuff, so you can measure at any time. Line of sight obviously is going to be sort of a true line of sight. Clear view is totally in the open, and then you do have a 180-degree front and rear arc. And the last bit that I wanted to cover is movement and combat. So movement and combat are, again, done with the same specific dice. Figures move in straight lines, though terrain can cause them to turn. Figures must move the full distance that you roll, except for close actions if they reach the target, and ranged actions in order to get in position for a better shot. And you can touch your bases freely. It's a crowded city. However, a figure's base can't cross over another figure's base. If another figure's base is in the way, they're pushed aside. And if a token or marker has been placed next to the figure, it's moved alongside and the figure moves. So that, again, it's a way to get personal discontent is if you bump people during your moves, then you're going to get, that like stink eye basically from the fishmonger that you just ran into. All actions start by moving, possibly followed by attacking or interacting. For movement part of an action, the dice work differently. Sword results indicate possible directions that you can move. So it helps to roll them near the figure in question. In most cases, the current player may choose which direction to take. Note that the 3 swords results provide 2 possible directions. So you can see here, the sword blade is always pointing the direction you can go. So the double sword blade actually matters because it means you can go either direction along that line. Foot results let you move further in the same direction, however, much further depends on the action, and different actions provide coin results. And if your coin results rolled, the door, climb, and jump coin effects are explained in the terrain section later on. You'll need those to do special actions like jump, climb, etc. And open doors. Figures in the way. Remember that figures' bases must not cross over. Other figures in the way are pushed to the side, just enough to let the figure pass. Each figure pushed aside reduces the total movement by 1 inch. And then barging past. If a figure's running in a flee or close action or a civilian running away and moves at least 4 inches, they may knock people over as they barge past. For each figure in the way, roll a dice 6. On a 1, 2, 3, they're pushed aside as normal. On a 4+, they're knocked over and you gain a discontent. And the -1 movement penalty applies either way. Figures don't knock over friends. Those people just basically get moved aside. Yeah, I love this. I love the fact that basically the movement is totally at random because you're in this crazy crowded city and you need to make the best of it unless there's a suspect in the table, in which case you can just move towards the suspect. So as soon as there's something like happening, you can move around however you want. But as the guards are just kind of like searching for people not doing good things, you have to move in this sort of like random and chaotic way. Carrying stuff can make it obviously, heavier, and then slower to move around and do stuff because you're, have like a tied up suspect on your back. And then finally, actions. When a figure's on an action token, they must make one of the following actions. These are the main actions as opposed to reactions for like being attacked. And those are things like shooting, a roving action. The figure walks about using their wits to hopefully choose the best direction. This is how people normally move about the city. In addition, guards use this action to spot sneaking suspects. So roving action is an awareness test. It moves 4 inches, and if your foot is rolled, you add +1. So again, you would roll your agility. You would move, as a roving action, you'd move 4 inches. And then every foot you rolled in the pool would give you an extra inch of movement. So you would take, like, let's say you're a guard captain. You have a 3 agility. You roll 3 dice. Those are the possible directions you can go. And you're going to go 4 inches every +1 for the feet that show up in the dice roll. And sorry, it's wits in this case, not agility. So it'd be 4 dice for that guard captain. Choose the player's direction. If no swords are rolled, the figure moves straight ahead in their current facing. The figure turns in the direction chosen and moves 4 inches +1 per foot result rolled. And then coin effect. Guards only halt. The guard does not have to move the full distance rolled. They can even stay still. They must still turn in the direction of the sword result. And guards only spot suspect. The guard can remove a sneak marker on a suspect within targeting range. During a roving action, guards and allies may move towards a friendly guard with a lantern or any type of torch that they can see within 18 inches, instead of using the direction of the sword result. Lanterns and torches also provide the illumination coin effect. And then roving civilians, don't forget that a civilian makes a roving action with a time token drawn. A second civilian then responds as well. Here's a little example of what that would look like. Yeah, and this is great. I love the fact that you're just going to kind of move at random in the beginning. A flee action is to run away. A sneak action is to sneak, and these will be actions on plot cards as well. So they give you kind of the same like it's the same base, right? You're still going to roll on things like wits, but a flee action, for instance, would be on agility because you're moving faster, and every foot you roll is 2 inches instead of 1. A sneak action allows you to roll additional coin effects like stealing. So these are where the unique like characters that show up during plots will do different things than just randomly bump into each other and move. Cautious actions, again, you move on wits. Close actions. Cannot target a figure with a sneak marker, but they must be spotted first. You're going to run towards people and try and like hit them. And then a ranged action, which is to take a shot with somebody. Various statuses like help and hindrance could take place, and they would like affect how you would do your turn. And then finally attacks, hitting somebody. The attacker has to get into base-to-base contact, usually with a close action. Or if you're making a range action, you have to be in range of the weapon. The attacker chooses if they're going to do a close strike, a range strike, or seize, and make an aim or agility test. And then if the test has failed, the attack misses. If it's passed, the attack was well aimed and move on to step 2. If the target's ready or has an action left, they can make a reaction. Take the appropriate action token from the container and put it next to the figure. If they chose to react, like defend or dodge, turn to face their attacker. If it's passed, the reaction succeeds in thwarting the attack, and the action's over. If it's failed, that's unsuccessful, and they get hit. And if you have no more actions left, you move straight to step 3, which is you got hit. If the attacker has been thwarted by the reaction, the attacker takes a wound roll or subdue roll, depending on the type of the attack, if you're going to try and club somebody or if you're going to try and kill them. If it's passed, the attack causes an injury or knocks the target to the ground. If it's failed, the attack's too weak to cause any effect. Either way, the action's over. And it's basically going to be based upon what you're doing. So if you're trying to wound somebody with a close attack, and you're defending or dodging against it, then the effects would be a roll, usually with your brawn. So in this case, a roll number of dice equal to the figure's aim strike, +1 if they're knocked down on the ground, +1 for each figure assisting. If you pass an accurate strike, if you get a critical pass, so if you get basically a 3 to 5, it's a normal pass. If you get double the number of hits that you need, it becomes critical. So 6+ is, you roll 2 3s on the dice pool. Accurate and strong, pass, and +1 dice on the wound roll. And all kinds of different defense actions that you can do as well. And they'll be based on different stats. And then the outcome, of course, is the wound roll. It's your brawn if it's like a melee attack. And then you would roll again and look for successes. If it's a pass, you take a blood. If it's a critical, the target is cut down automatically. Remember to cause discontent and the action ends. If a figure has more blood than their brawn score, they are immediately cut down. So if your brawn is 3, for instance, you can take 3 blood scores before you're knocked out. And then subdued. It's a strength test on brawn. And then the target's knocked down to the ground. If they already have the ground, they suffer a blood damage and the action ends. If you get a critical, the target's subdued and the action ends. So you try to get a critical on this one and to actually knock them down. And you get plus dice if the target's already been knocked down, +1 for every blood drop they already have, and then +1 dice if the seize roll was a critical. So you try to get to that 6 and then you get your automatic effect. And that lets you arrest people. So there's lots to do. It almost has like an infinity amount of options for the actions you can take. And with the RNG, there's going to be a lot of like, I think once you get used to it, there's going to be a lot of like quick decision making to do. But in the beginning, you have so many options. I think a lot of people are just going to default to, I'm going to go bash that guy over the head and try and arrest him. It's going to get very Judge Dredd very fast. But depending on the plots, you might have to do other things like investigate, extinguish, command, question, barter, or intimidate. And then you get all your suspect behaviors, all your different weapons and equipment that you can give people. So there's tons of different like spells, items, bows, crossbows and muskets, slingshots. You could use your own models for this too if you wanted to. And then their traits, like if they cause fire, if they have to be reloaded, if they stun somebody. And so there's plenty of additional stuff here for like the models to actually reflect like how they play. Terrain rules, and again, there's like tons of different coin effects you can do to trigger things like going through a door, jumping. More uses for that kind of critical effect. And then how to interact with buildings. And I'm going to skip down now because we're only at like, that's where we're at page 144. I'm going to skip down now to the quick ref because this is where we're at. You can actually see it's not that much stuff when you lay it out in quick reference. You can see all of the tables you need pretty much on these 4 pages. And this is what I'm going to be printing out because it'll let me go quickly. And then the last thing I wanted to look at real fast is just the missions. So patrol duty, for instance. Oops, I just skipped back from it. But setting up and playing a game. Number of players. So if you create your squad, maximum number of points is 45 for solo play. So for instance, you're going to buy your equipment and your guys. I think a guard captain is 6 points and you use recruitment cards, 4 points for a constable, 6 points for a guard captain. So if you're playing solo and you're at 45 points, just 5 constables and a captain is 26 points. You'll have another 19 points to spend on gear. And then extra costs, things like range weapons. It's 2 for a captain, mounts, and attack animals if you want to buy some hounds. Your force must always include a captain. You can include 2 figures armed with range weapons if you want, and solo players can have up to 4. You can include 1 mounted figure. And recruitment charge is unique. You may only ever have it once. So for instance, I think the attack animal is unique. Or maybe it's reduced to 2. And so yeah, so 2, 3, and 4 players, you can have 30 crowns to recruit with. But remember, some guys will stay home when you're actually playing. Trait cards use to modify figures' abilities. So if you want to have like a miniature look more like what they are, those trait cards can be used. And again, they're sort of like a tweaking system. Once players have chosen their squads, shuffle the trait cards and deal them out to each player to a maximum of 3. So all players get 5. Every trait card can be assigned to a different guard in the squad. And unique figures can't be given traits. So it's a way of like tweaking your guys, a lot like the trait system in whatchamacallit, in Don't Look Back, where your characteristics could be randomly drawn. So if you're wily, for instance, you're +1 to your wits, but -1 to your brawn. If you're lithe, you're +1 to your agility, -1 to your brawn. And it just gives your guys some character based upon what they look like. And then get some quick start rules for how to play the game, just like directly out of the box. Choose a mission, and there's 6 in here. So patrol duty is the standard one we just started looking at, but I wanted to go back to this part. The body, contraband, fire, safe passage, and raid, and these give you your overall sort of like plot beats of what you're going to do. Pick your starting guard squad. Whoopsies. So for 1 player, it's 30 points with 6. If you're playing with 2 players, you start with 3, and then you call in recruits, and 15 points. 3, it's 10, and then 2 each if you're going to have 3 and 4. Sorry, 10 points and 2 figures each when you're doing 3 and 4. And captains are not deployed at the start of the game. They cannot be chosen, but when you call reinforcements turn to turn, the rest of the guards start to arrive. So usually, if you're not playing solo, you're going to have 2 or 3 people on the table, and your reinforcements arrive where and when you need them. And then play! So you figure out your objectives, figure out who the first player is randomly, and then they draw the first card, and then calling more guards are going to arrive on the table edge from the guardhouse as things escalate. And then finally, we have our campaign system for injury rolls and following the story, like keeping your plot cards in play. And then the no discontent limit, no solo discontent limit for discontent, which I think is very funny. Playing fully cooperatively, playing larger games, and just doing your own thing. Some permission to do whatever it is you feel like. And here's a training mission. Recruit guards, constables using figures from the starter set. So for solo, play 5 guards. 2 players is 3 guards each. 3 or 4 players, 2 guards each. 1 player chooses a random, can equip a guard with a ranged weapon. All the rest have melee weapons. Captains aren't used. Trade cards aren't used. And mounted figures aren't used. We'll probably do this one for the Let's Play. Plot cards, find the 4 training mission plot cards, keep them in order, and place them face down so that number 1 is on top. And then civilians, place at least 20 civilian figures at least 9 inches from the board edge and scatter each civilian. Do this fast. There's no need for accuracy. Just create some random starting positions from the middle. And that's it. We're at the crossroads of Gallows Halt. Take 4 clue markers, numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4, and shuffle them face down and take turns placing them at least 6 inches apart and 9 from the board edge. The markers represent crates to be searched, so ideally place them on suitable terrain pieces. So this is a nice, quick mission, and the initial plot cards start the game by playing the first plot card, Suspicious Crates. There's going to be 1 plot in play I would like to start off with. So I love this. It comes with a demo mission. The game ends when all 4 plot cards have been completed or failed, and winning, the player with the most gold coins is the winner. But first, you must lose a coin for every point of discontent that you have for having done actions during the game. And this is the one that we'll probably start with. So a nice, simple mission, 3 to 6 buildings on the table, 3 guardsmen like to come and like check out what's going on. But we have 20 civilians, so I got to get busy painting some civilians and getting this ready to play. And getting my fantasy terrain section up to snuff so that we can check out this game on the paint table. So that's it. I'll look at Guards Traitors Toll. I'm super excited about this one. I think that the fact that we have 1, bananas box of miniatures in here. 2, a game that looks like it's going to be infinitely repeatable because it's always going to be random and different. But the starter set's designed to be really new player friendly and to give you everything you need to play is very cool. And again, for the actual price of the box set, which I believe it's 93 Canadian. And of course we're in Canada bucks. We're just, our dollar is terrible right now. So I think it's probably about $70 US. You're gonna get 36 figures. They could be used for like a variety of different games. And as I said earlier, these are fantastic plastic figures, right? You can mix and match these however you want. And I wish there's some pictures of frames here, but like just these guys by themselves, man, look at how cool these guardsmen are. They're extremely cool, and they're fully mix and matchable with like these jabronis. Look, It's Bill the Butcher and a fife player and a dude with a snake coming out of his shirt. Like this looks to be a lot of fun, and I'm really excited to have this on the channel and actually start playing some games. I think Jay and I are gonna have a lot of fun playing this, but I'll like, he can just bring 6 guardsmen. You know what I mean? Like I will paint up all the civilians and my own guard squad, and I can just host anybody who's got 6 sort of fantasy guard figures to play, which I think is going to be fantastic. So there it is, another indie hour done. Big thanks to Graham for sending this along for us to check out, and for you guys for watching. We'll see this in a Let's Play probably in the next couple weeks. Until then, I'm Ash.